The year was 1947. Jackie Robinson stepped onto Ebbets Field for the first time in Brooklyn, New York, playing for the Dodgers. This was the beginning of a new era. Jackie was the first African American to play in Major League Baseball. There were some that were strongly opposed to this decision made by Branch Rickey, the Dodgers' general manager, but others cheered Jackie on as he played baseball. Segregation in baseball was a big deal. Once the color barrier was broken, it changed baseball or life in general for African Americans dramatically. African Americans were being savagely persecuted because of the color of their skin. They were often refused service, and if they did get service, they were given the worst service possible. Jackie Robinson was a significant cause in America's integration and helped the United States be more open to African Americans on and off the baseball field. Branch Rickey had the dream to create a baseball team of primarily African Americans, but there was something stopping him from doing that. The Jim Crow laws, unspoken laws made to oppress African Americans. There was no fair reason whatsoever for the savage persecution that followed African Americans everywhere. Water fountains, diners, and buses were labeled for either white use only or colored use. There was even a baseball league for only African Americans. The Imperial Laundry Company had a sign that read, "We wash for white people only." Another sign in Detroit, Michigan said, "We want white tenants in our white community." The same sort of thing happened in baseball. There were many racist groups that attacked the African Americans. For example, the Ku Klux Klan. This racist group burned African Americans' houses down, and the Ku Klux Klan would murder African Americans in the street. They also burned crosses. There were even police officers that were members of this horrible group. They all hunted down these innocent African Americans, including men and women as well as children. The Ku Klux Klan is still active in 22 of the 50 states. Mississippi has 5 of these Ku Klux Klan groups still active, and Alabama has 4 groups active, and a couple states have 3 groups, 7 states with 2 groups, and 10 states with 1 group, as of 2017. While these groups are still active, they are not nearly as severe. Some examples of this hatred and horrible treatment of black people was lynching, the hanging of people. This was the Ku Klux Klan and other racist groups' way to show the African Americans that white people were superior. Sports were also not immune to the segregation. Robinson was hated by the Ku Klux Klan, but he stood up for himself, and so did the president of the Brooklyn Dodgers, Branch Rickey. When the Ku Klux Klan, or really anybody, said anything about him and his decisions with putting players on the team, such as Jackie Robinson, Branch Rickey would reply forcefully. One thing he said was, "Someday I'm going to have to stand before God, and if he asks me why I didn't let that Robinson fellow play ball, I don't think saying because of the color of his skin would be a good enough answer." An example of the serious injustices to African Americans was the Red Summer race riots of 1919. 100 people were killed in Chicago because a black teen went to a white beach. The Atlanta race riots saw 25 to 40 deaths of African Americans because some white politicians didn't want black men to vote. The East St. Louis race riot 1917 ended with 40 African American deaths and 6,000 chased from their home. In 1921, the Tulsa race riot brought about the deaths of at least 60 black people and 21 white. These injustices and terrible tragedies were brought upon African Americans merely because of the pigmentation of their skin. As there were race riots in the streets, there was segregation on the baseball field. Whites did not believe blacks were worthy of playing at the same level of them. They believed that they should be separate. The African Americans had their own league. This was the Negro Leagues. The Negro Leagues were special leagues created just for the African Americans because most of the white players did not want African Americans playing in their league. The Negro Leagues were a financially unstable league because they didn't have as many resources as the major leagues did. Teams would travel to fields only to find that the owners would not rent them out to black baseball teams. According to the Eyewitness to History, the famous interview between Jackie Robinson and Branch Rickey. "Mr. Rickey," he murmured, "do you want a ball player who's afraid to fight back? I want a ball player with guts enough not to fight back." Many people were very upset that Robinson was going to join the Dodgers, and they would try everything to keep Robinson off the team. Jackie Robinson once quoted, I'm not concerned with you liking or disliking me. All I ask is that you respect me as a human being. Some players even created an anti-Robinson petition to try to keep him off the team. The Dodgers manager Leo Durocher was outraged when he found out about the petition and told the players, "I don't care if the guy is yellow or black or has stripes like a zebra. I'm the manager of this team and I say he plays. What's more, I say he can make us all rich. And if any of you cannot use the money, I will see that you are all traded." Jackie first started out with the Montreal Royals, the Dodgers farm team. He excelled on the team with a .349 batting average. In Canada, life was different for the Robinsons. They were liked by neighbors, and Jackie's wife Rachel deemed the experience blissful. Jackie proved himself worthy of the major leagues. The next year, however, was not the walk in the park that 1946 had been. During Robinson's rookie year, he was booed. He was treated awfully. The fans would do all sorts of hatred acts. For example, once a man threw a black cat onto the field and yelled, "There's your cousin," to Jackie Robinson. Also, there were many death threats sent to Jackie Robinson. One example of these was a note to him which quoted, "Robinson, we are going to kill you if you attempt to enter a ball game at Crosley Field. The Travelers. Note, we have already gotten rid of several like you. One was found in a river just recently." One time, while Jackie was playing in Philadelphia, the manager for the Phillies, named Ben Chapman, started yelling racial threats at Jackie. One of Jackie's teammates, Dixie Walker, got up and, despite the color differences in their skin, stood up to Ben, who was later fired by the Philadelphia organization. Although Jackie was treated very poorly, he kept on persevering, and his numbers did most of the talking. He put up a .311 career-long batting average, 147 home runs, 731 RBI, and a .409 on-base percentage. Robinson was also the Rookie of the Year in 1947 when he joined the Dodgers. He led the Dodgers to a 1955 World Series win and was the National League MVP in 1949. Some of the whites would even refuse to take the field because of the blacks' presence on the diamond. According to the Library of Congress, one of the few black players on an integrated professional league team was Moses Fleetwood "Fleet" Walker, the catcher for the minor league Toledo Blue Stockings. In 1883, the Chicago White Stockings, led by star player Adrian "Cap" Anson, refused to take the field against the Blue Stockings because of Walker's presence. Despite the terrible acts towards Robinson, he kept on persevering for his rights in what he believed in. Many people, such as Leo Durocher, admired him for this, but way too many were against and hated him. He was not afraid of the many threats he received, and he was a leader for many, if not all, of the African Americans who shared his dream. Through it all, Jackie persisted. Whenever he stepped up to the plate, he ignored the boos or people who called him names. He was a champion in the civil rights movement in America, on and off the baseball diamond. Civil rights writer John Lewis said about Jackie Robinson, "He gave the black community a sense of hope, a sense of pride." After Jackie Robinson broke the color barrier on April 15, 1947, African Americans were treated somewhat better. They were not only treated better, but after Jackie Robinson's and other civil rights leaders' bold movements, the Jim Crow laws were slowly removed. Today, African Americans can walk into a restaurant without being thrown out. They can sit in the front of a bus without being arrested by the police. They don't have to go to a special colored bathroom. They can vote. They can walk across a street without being insulted about their skin color. Now most racial discrimination has stopped in America because of the acts of men and women like Jackie Robinson. Though Jackie Robinson breaking the color barrier helped segregation, it was still not completely solved. In Birmingham, there was a civil rights movement for black people led by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Once, when the African Americans filed out of a church to begin their peaceful protest, they were attacked by dogs, sprayed by high-pressure fire hoses, and some were even brutally killed. Needless to say, the attacks and racism forked onto these people just because they had a different skin color was outrageous. Since Jackie was such a leader, once a year major league teams wear 42 on their jerseys to remember and respect Jackie. Jackie Robinson once said, "A life is not important except in the impact it has on other lives." This quote symbolizes what Jackie stood for. He put himself down to raise others up, and his legacy still stands today.